Good morning and welcome to chapter 12 of Gregor. Um, Yesterday they went to sleep and Gregor thought Boots was grabbing his wrist, but then the last line was curled around his forearm was a slimy red tentacle. Chapter 12. Gregor had just enough time to let out a yell before the tentacle gave a terrific yank. He flew over the side of the boat and would have gone straight into the water if one of his boots hadn't caught on the edge. Aries! A second yank pulled him head first under the water up to his waist. He managed to get a good breath of air before he submerged. His legs were sliding under now, too. He could feel the cold water climbing over his thighs. Sorry, one second. He managed to get a good breath of air before he submerged. His legs were sliding under now, too. He could feel the cold water climbing over his thighs, his knees, his ankles. Oh, someone had him by his feet and was pulling back. A tug of war ensued with Gregor as the rope. For a dreadful minute it was touch and go, with the creature dragging him deeper and Ares dragging him back out. Gregor beat at the tentacle with his free hand, but it didn't seem to have much effect. Finally, he got his mouth up to his arm and sank his teeth into the tentacle as deeply as he could. He didn't know if he did any real damage, but he surprised the animal just enough for it to loosen its grip a bit. Just then Ares gave a big heave-ho, and Gregor flew out of the water, coughing and gasping for air. He dangled upside down a moment, his boots locked in Ares' claws before the bat dropped him on the floor of the boat. Gregor retched, and a gush of water rushed out his mouth. He vaguely noticed it was salty like the ocean. "Overlander," he heard Marith cry. "Can you fight?" "Fight?" Gregor struggled onto his hands and knees and got his first good look at their situation. Tentacles were shooting up over the sides of the boat right and left, their suckers latching onto anything they came into contact with. The crew was fighting back with whatever they had, swords, teeth, claws, pincers, trying to sever the appendages from the ghastly creatures looming in the dark water beneath them. "Catch!" he heard Marith yell, and he saw a sword flying at him. He grabbed it out of the air by the handle just in time to slice through a tentacle that had encircled his ankle. Photos Glow and Zap were blazing, but even with their help, Gregor could have seen by the light of the water, which shone an unearthly phosphorescent green. "Squid! It's some kind of squid!" he shouted. The three bats were in flight, diving down and ripping with their claws. Marith and Howard were slashing away with swords. Twitch Tip was a whirlwind of gnashing teeth. "Overlander, your sister!" he heard Ares warn. Gregor turned to see Temp standing over the still sleeping Boots. The roach's mandibles were snapping away at the intruders. He was disabling many tentacles, but they kept coming. Three grabbed onto the cockroach's life jacket and pulled him into the water, leaving Boots completely unprotected. As Ares dove in to battle for Temp, a particularly large tentacle Sorry, I just lost my spot. Haven't had enough coffee this morning, I think, guys. As Ares dove in to battle for Temp, a particularly large tentacle whipped over the stern. When Gregor saw the suckers latch onto Boots' blanket, it happened again, the strange phenomenon that had occurred with the blood balls. The greater world receded, and it was as if nothing but he and the tentacles existed. Around him, somewhere, there were voices and thuds and glowing green water being beaten into a frothy foam, but all he was aware of was the attackers. His sword began to move, not in a premeditative way, but with some instinctive precision and force utterly beyond his control. He hacked away at a tentacle over tentacle over tentacle, and Overlander, he heard Marith's voice reach out for him. "Overlander, enough!" But he didn't stop. "Gigo, no hitting, no hitting," he heard. Boots was crying. The world zoomed back into perspective. Gregor was sitting in the middle of the boat. Severed tentacles flopped on the floor around him. His breath was coming in short, rasping gasps. Marith grabbed his shoulders and gave him a sharp shake. "They're going. It's over." Gregor's arm, the one the squid had caught, not the one holding the sword, throbbed. 4 angry red circles, sucker marks, swelled on his arm. He was drenched with sweat and seawater and squid slime. "Gigo, no hitting. Go home. Boots, go home," came from behind him. He turned out of Mara's grasp and saw her sitting, still half tangled in her blanket, sobbing but unharmed. Muck from the squid had splattered her as well. Temp sat next to her. He was missing 2 legs. Gregor tossed away the sword, reached for Boots, and held her tightly. "Hey, you're okay. You're okay, baby. Don't cry." "Gigo, Boots, go home. See Mama," she sobbed. "Mama." That was her ultimate cry of distress, when she was upset and none of the rest of them could fix it. "Mama!" Gregor sunk down on a seat and rocked her back and forth, patting her back and trying to soothe her with words. How much had she seen, and what had she seen him do? While he held her on his lap, Howard appeared with a pail of water and cleaned her off. Somehow he distracted her with some silly rhyme about washing her toes. 2 tiny rows of 5 tiny toes give Boots 10 good reasons to wiggle her nose. At this point, Howard would press her foot against his nose, sniff her toes, and go, "Woo!" as if the smell just about knocked him out. Wiggle your nose at 8, 9, 10 toes, then give them a bath so each tiny toe glows. Boots began to laugh between sobs, especially whenever Howard said "whew," and soon she was completely caught up in trying to say the rhyme with him. Gregor had spent lots of time amusing his little sisters. He recognized a good toddler bit when he saw it. "You make that up?" asked Howard. "Yes." He asked Howard. "Yes, for Chim." It was always hard to get her to take baths, said Howard, avoiding his gaze. It crossed Gregor's mind that he had not been particularly nice to Howard. He had lumped him in with Stella and the other cousins. But Howard hadn't liked what his sister said to Luxa about Henry, and he had not bragged about their dad being in charge at the font. When they got Boots dressed in fresh clothes and gave her a cookie, she trotted off to teach the rhyme to Temp, who lacked not only toes, but legs. "Temp, do you need some bandages or medicine?" asked Gregor. "No, more legs. I will grow more legs," said Temp. He didn't seem too upset about the loss. I wonder if cockroaches can actually do that. Photos Gloglo and Zap were uninjured and very pleased with the bounty of squid parts that littered the boat. Apparently, squid was a real delicacy for fireflies, and the two had no time to squabble as they embarked in a heated race to see who could wolf down the most. Andromeda and Twitch Tip had a couple of sucker marks, but Gregor's were the worst, as the squid had held on to him the longest, and he had no fur to protect his skin. As they all cleaned the slime off their bodies, he saw swollen red circles were beginning to ooze pus. His whole body felt hot and shaky. "I think maybe it poisoned me or something," Gregor said, and suddenly his knees gave way and he was lying in the boat. Everything was swimming around. Someone pressed something against his lips and ordered him to swallow. He managed to obey just before he blacked out. A fever dream followed. He was submerged in bubbly, fluorescent green water, wrestling with writhing tentacles, while hideous fish dug their fangs into him again and again. His whole family watched over the side of the boat, reaching for him, trying to pull him to safety. He screamed to Boots to get back, but she kept singing the rhyme about her toes. Temp appeared in the water beside him, bobbing around in his life jacket. He pulled off his legs, offering them to Gregor. At some point, thankfully, he sank into nothingness. When he came to, he could tell that a lot of time had passed. His arm was bandaged and pulsating with pain. It hurt to open his eyes. And when he did, he had a moment of confusion. For there, sitting in the bow of the boat and smiling down at him, was Luxa. Alright, chapter 13 seems short enough, so hopefully I can get through it. "I let you go off for one day and look at the trouble you got into," Luxa said. "I bet I know somebody else who's in trouble," Gregor croaked with a smile. "Much trouble," he heard Meredith say behind him. Gregor didn't have to turn his head to see the soldier's expression. He was angry. "I cannot go back," Luxa said with satisfaction. "It is too far now, and Aurora and I would most surely perish in the deep." "Yes, you timed that nicely," said Meredith. "I know," said Luxa. "I know you know. Everyone will know you knew if you arrive home in one piece to tell the tale," said Meredith. Gregor had never thought much about Meredith's relationship with Luxa. She was his queen, or would be when she turned 16, but there was another side to it he recognized after the day of training. Meredith was her coach, and he wasn't afraid to chew her out. "Oh, Meredith, how long are you going to stay angry with me?" said Luxa. "It's been at least a day already. No one will blame you for my disobedience." "That's much beside the point, Luxa," barked Meredith. "This venture is extremely dangerous, and what if you die? You leave Regalia with Nerissa as a leader, and she is of age. Can you imagine what will happen then? To Regalia? To Nerissa?" "She will have to abdicate," Howard said from somewhere in the other boat. "She will do no such thing. She will rule if I die, and not Vicus, and never you and your wretched sister," said Luxa. There was a shocked silence. Then Howard spoke. "Is this what you think? That I want to be king? I believe you have me confused with another cousin." Ouch. It was another allusion to Henry, but this time Gregor thought Luxa might have had it coming. "And do not judge me by Stellavette. She is wretched. I admit it, but I can do no more to control her than you could control Henry," Howard spat out. "If you think I will believe you innocent, I will not. I've seen you torment Nerissa," said Luxa. "When? When did I do this? I have barely spent 5 minutes with her altogether," said Howard. "At the festival, when you set that lizard on her," said Luxa. Set it? I did not set it. That was a rare color changer, and I thought it would amuse her to see it. But Henry said he saw you, began Luxa. Henry said? Henry said? I can't believe that. Now you do not question things that Henry said, Luxa. Is he the only one who told you I was after your crown? Is he the one who told you I was after your crown? Howard's voice rose in frustration. Henry said. Shh, too loud. You like Fofo, he heard Boots say. It is Fotis Glow, said an offended voice in his boat. Oh, be quiet, Fofo, said Twitch-Tip, and Gregor had to pretend to cough to conceal his laughter. Boots' feet patterned up by Gregor's head. She leaned over, looking upside down at them. Hi, you. Hi, you, said Gregor. What's going on, Boots? I do toes. Whew, I do breakfast 2 times, Boots said, holding up 4 fingers. She squatted down and pressed her nose into his forehead so her eyes were blinking at each other upside down. I see you, she said. I see you too, said Gregor. Hi, said Boots as she trotted off to the other end of the boat. She was so cute. Gregor struggled to a sitting position. His whole body ached like he had the flu. He leaned down against the side of the boat and looked at his bandaged arm. So what's it look like under the bandage? It's not for the faint of heart, said Marith. You may thank Howard for saving your arm. Saving it? You were going to cut it off? He asked instinctively, pulling it closer. We would have had no choice if the venom spread further, said Howard. Said Marith, but Howard was able to suck it from the wounds. Oh, thanks, Howard, said Gregor gingerly, flexing his fingers. Luxa scowled at him. What? He sucked venom from my arm and I can't say thank you? I'm trained in water aid. I've sworn to save anyone in peril related to the water. If my cousin had been paying attention that night, there would be no need to be grateful, said Luxa. Gregor remembered waking, seeing the tentacle. No, it was my fault. I was supposed to be on guard and I fell asleep. He felt ashamed to admit it, but it wasn't fair to let Howard take the blame. Everyone was quiet for a moment. Then Mara spoke up. We probably would have still been attacked, but it is crucial to stay awake on guard. Not only our own survival, but that of many hangs on this journey. It was even worse than Gregor thought. Sorry, I was tired, but I thought I could stay awake. It's something you learn, how to stand guard. There are tricks to keeping your mind alert. You will find them, said Howard. But Luke and Maris said nothing, and Gregor knew that, for them, what he had done was inexcusable. Howard came from the font. It was not so dangerous there. Luke and Meredith had fought too many rats to let him off the hook. Meredith called a break for dinner. Gregor was famished. He stuffed way too much in his mouth, choked, and had to take a piece of bread back out. Excuse me, I guess I haven't eaten dinner since last night. That was 2 nights ago, said Howard. You've been out for almost 2 full days. 2 days? Exclaimed Gregor. He had never been out that long before. 2 days plus the one he had traveled. They must be at least halfway to the Bane, and he felt no more prepared to face it than when he had left Regalia. He should be doing something. He thought about asking Marith to give him a few more sword lessons, but he was so wiped out from the squid venom he doubted he could lift the sword. Besides, hitting things with the sword didn't seem to be his problem. In fact, if anything, he couldn't stop hitting things. It was like something took over his whole being, something beyond his control. In a weak attempt to better his chances with the Bane, he lay on his back for a while, practicing echolocation. Click! But his mind kept going back to the squid and how he hadn't been able to stop the hacking away at it. Hadn't been able to stop hacking away at it. He couldn't really even remember fighting it, the same way he couldn't remember hitting the blood balls. Click! Sometimes that happened to people who were crazy. They had blank spots and couldn't remember how they'd gotten somewhere or what they'd been doing. Click! Oh, and there was that guy in the werewolf movie. Same thing happened to him. He'd just wake up all bloody, wondering what had happened to his clothes. Click. Gregor knew there weren't really werewolves. Click. Then again, how did he know that? If you'd asked him 6 months ago, he would have said there weren't giant talking rats. Click, click, click. He was getting nowhere with this echolocation stuff. Maybe Rip Red was right. He had to focus. But who could focus when they were in the middle of an underground sea full of squid venom on their way to killing a monstrous white rat? Not him. Gregor sat up and saw Luxa sitting nearby, sharpening her sword on some kind of stone. How do you feel? She asked. Better since I ate, said Gregor. Luxa tested the edge of her blade by splitting a strand of rope. She frowned in dissatisfaction and continued to work on it. That looks pretty sharp to me, said Gregor. Not sharp enough for what lies ahead of us, said Luxa. It's doubtful many of us will survive. Okay, so there's another page left in the chapter, but I'm running out of time, so I will be back tomorrow with chapter 14.